Good morning, New Brunswick, and welcome to the New Brunswick Today Show. I'm Charlie Cradaville. Today's weather report, hope you like it hot. We've got partial cloudiness going on, some scattered showers and thunderstorms during the afternoon predicted. Near record high temperatures today. We're expecting to be at 91 degrees Fahrenheit, and chance of rain is 40%. Now, there's actually 3 schools here in New Brunswick in the city that are going to have an early dismissal today. So parents and students at the Lincoln Elementary School, Livingston Elementary School, and the Roosevelt School should be aware of that. That early dismissal was announced yesterday shortly after 4:30 p.m. The reason for the early dismissal? Due to inclement weather. We asked the district's top officials to explain why some schools were getting out early and others not. Is there a different weather report for different parts of New Brunswick? It's only 5 square miles. The district hasn't gotten back to us yet. So early dismissal today is on for those 3 schools for students only. We've also got some traffic advisories for today, Friday, September 9th. You want to avoid Sanford Street. It'll be closed between Joyce Kilmer and Livingston Avenues until 4 p.m. And Wilcox Road over in Rutgers Village is going to be closed until 4 p.m. Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode of the New Brunswick Today Show. We've got a great show for you today. Our special guest is Gavin Rozzi. He's the founder and editor of 2 different online publications that have really shaken things up in Ocean County. And a lot of folks have actually compared the work that we're doing here in New Brunswick to what Gavin's been doing in his community. We're really looking forward to having him on the show, so stay tuned for that interview. Please take a moment to share this video on Facebook. You're on Facebook right now watching live. We're grateful for that, but share it with your friends. Share this video and get more people watching it. We also are going to be taking your calls. We ask you to give us a call if there's anything you want to speak about. This show focuses on issues in Middlesex County and beyond. We want to hear from you. The number here is 732-993-9697. This is our 3rd show. We keep getting better every show. We're so happy to have you with us. And if you call, you can be the first caller. We want you to call the show, and we'll put you on the air, and we can talk about what you want to talk about. Today in New Brunswick, State Senate President Stephen Sweeney is going to be here for a press event with Mayor James Cahill, State Senator Bob Smith, and School Superintendent Aubrey Johnson. The group's going to visit the Redshaw Elementary School. And the event's supposed to focus on the value of early childhood education. They're going to tour the school, meet with educators and supporters, they say, to discuss the critical importance of investing in early childhood education and the need to expand the state's nationally recognized high-quality preschool programs. New Brunswick has a pre-K program that these folks say has proven to be successful, and they also say that it's going to be threatened if the Governor Christie's proposed flat funding education plan is enacted, and we spoke with Mayor Cahill. He said he's going to fight against that. So in other news, we took the day off of doing the show yesterday so that we could confront the Middlesex County Tax Board yesterday at their public meeting. As we reported yesterday, the tax board has been accused of shirking their constitutional responsibility to force towns to do what's called a revaluation to make sure all the property taxes in the town are equalized, and there's not any one advantage to one side of a town or another. Tax board hasn't forced the town to do that in more than 2 decades. They're the only one in the state that hasn't. And they also have an administrator who's been in office for decades and is put in retirement paperwork. But what we learned yesterday actually was that the administrator, Mr. Irving Verislav, even though he's put in his retirement paperwork, the tax board isn't even sure if he's really going to retire. So yesterday at the tax board, we asked the chairman, Mr. Richard Lorenzen, to speak to answer these questions about what the State Division of the Treasury has accused the board of doing, failing to fulfill their obligation. They even went so far as to say that the board members just demonstrated an astonishing lack of competence. And so we asked for Mr. Lorenzen to respond to that and also to clue us in on what's going to happen with Mr. Verislav. Here is that exchange from yesterday morning.
Always taking a position that the board doesn't necessarily mandate revals because we don't want to put undue pressure on the municipality as far as their budgets. We've been strong advocates of home rule, and especially with the fact that there is now a 2% cap on local municipalities and their budgets, which wasn't there in years gone past. We do monitor municipalities' ratios and their coefficients, and we feel as the coefficients are strong, we haven't put the undue burden on them of mandating revals, and I think that's where we have a difference of opinion with the state.
And I also wanted to ask what the plan is for getting a new, administrator for the office. I know Mr. Verislav's were going to retire.
Well, I don't know if he is going to retire. I think when you reach a certain age, a lot of people put in their papers to protect their spouse in the event that something were to happen to them, if they qualify for pension credits. I do believe he's probably thinking about retirement more so than he has been in the past. If he does retire, the board will seek to fill his position, as the board typically is the group that does fill the position. But until he actually says he's retiring, there's nothing for us to do.
Okay. And is the board satisfied with his services, his ability to serve at this point? Are you satisfied that he's up to the job?
We're satisfied with his being the administrator over the last 20 years. He'll admit that he's had some health issues, and he's dealing with those. He's been in treatment for a variety of different things, and I think he is coming to terms with whether it's time to retire, but I can't speak for him.
Okay. And why is he not here today? Do you know?
I believe he's on vacation.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Always taking a position that the board doesn't necessarily mandate revals because we don't want to put undue pressure on the municipality as far as their budgets. We've been strong advocates of home rule, especially with the fact that there is now a 2% cap on local municipalities and their budgets, which wasn't there in years gone past. We do monitor municipalities' ratios and their coefficients, and we feel as the coefficients are strong, we haven't put the undue burden on them of mandating revals, and I think that's what.
Now, Mr. Richard Lorenzen, that was the man that was talking to me there. We wanted to find out where he works, so we did a trick that you can do. You go to fds.nj.gov, and you can actually find out where your public officials get their money. So you might have heard of double dipping. Well, actually, Mr. Lorenzen is a new breed we haven't seen before. He's a septuple dipper. That means he has 7 public jobs. So in addition to the job at the tax board, which we reported yesterday, he makes $20,000 a year from, his financial disclosure form also lists 6 other public employers. He's the tax collector for the Township of Woodbridge. He's also the sewer utility administrator for the Township of Edison. He does something for the city of Rahway. That's news to us. He also is the treasurer of the Central Jersey Joint Insurance Fund. That's what we call a JIF. It represents many different towns. And he's also involved in the First Responders Joint Insurance Fund. And he also listed income from the Township of Woodbridge Board of Education. So those are all of his public jobs, but that's not all. He also has some interesting private employment. He apparently owns a company called Floors Plus. But much more interesting is that he's on the payroll at Hovnanian Homes, one of the biggest developers in the state. So we'll keep you posted on this story. Obviously, the Middlesex County Tax Board is coming under a lot of criticism from the state officials, and now we're going to work to shine a light on exactly what's going on there and what the future holds for Middlesex County. So stay tuned to New Brunswick Today, newbrunswicktoday.com for more on that. Like we said, we're taking your calls this morning, 732-993-9697. Our top story today is actually out of Perth Amboy. Last night we were at the Perth Amboy Board of Education, and basically this is a complicated thing, so I'm going to try to explain this as simply as possible. The Perth Amboy Board of Education is one of the few towns in New Jersey that wants to switch to having elections for school board in April. Now, just a few years ago, just 5 years ago, there were elections in April in every town in New Jersey, except for the few that didn't have elections at all. Now, New Brunswick is the exception to the rule because we have our elections in April. But in 2012, the state legislature passed a law that allows towns to switch the elections to November. That law resulted in nearly every town in New Jersey, nearly every school district, changing to have November elections. Now, there's reasons why November elections might be better and reasons why April elections might be better. This was a discussion that every school board had. If they had elections, they were deciding whether or not to move it. Now, the reason so many towns moved is money. It is about the budget. If you have April elections, every year you have to put your budget up for a public vote. And that means that districts had to get out the vote and get people, parents, teachers, and others in the community to support the budget and actually vote yes on it. Otherwise, they'd risk having to make cuts to it. Now, the bill that was passed in 2012 to allow towns to switch from the April election to the November election resulted in most of the towns switching because it allowed them to avoid that budget vote. It said if they comply with the 2% cap on raising the budget that Governor Christie had already signed into law, it said you don't have to have that public vote anymore. And districts were eager to leave that behind. So most districts, including Perth Amboy, switched in 2012 to having November elections. Now, the law that allowed them to do that also allows them to switch back to having April elections if they want, starting after 4 years. So now, for the first time in 2016, municipalities that changed to having November school board elections are now able to switch back. We saw it happen near us. Plainfield voted to switch back to April elections. Asbury Park voted to switch back to April elections. The officials in those towns, those school districts, felt that the November experiment was a failure. They felt that it injected politics into the elections by pairing the elections for school board up with elections for things like mayor or president of the United States. And obviously the voters who were coming out for those elections might not have been as in tune with the school board issues that they were being asked to vote on. So those towns wanted to switch back. Perth Amboy, should be noted, wanted to switch back. The Board of Education voted in January to switch back to the April elections. Now, what happened next is really interesting and really strange. The law that originally set that up allowed not just the Board of Education to make the switch, but it also provided for the town council in that town to switch the election. It also even had a provision that was never used that would have allowed the people of the town to get signatures, put a question on the ballot, and have a public vote on whether or not to switch the elections. It never said, though, what happens if two of those parties disagree about what to do, and that's what happened in Perth Amboy. The city council, which has its elections in November, wanted to keep the Board of Ed elections in November. They say that it saves money. Not having to have that April election does save tens of thousands of dollars each year. Now, it's a drop in the bucket compared to the district budget, which is nearly $300 million in Perth Amboy, but they have been saving $60,000 to $80,000 a year, depending on who you ask, by having these elections in November. The city council didn't want to go back to having an extra separate election just for school board. So the city council passed their own bill, their own ordinance that said the elections aren't going to move. So there was a war between the city council and the Board of Ed in that city. It ended up in the courthouse right across the street from us in Middlesex County Court. And in March, a judge ruled in favor of the city council and said that the Board of Ed didn't quite play by the rules when it switched to wanting to have those elections back in April, and it ruled that the election will go ahead in November. So everyone thought the election was in November. We were looking forward to covering it. We asked the county clerk for copies of all the petitions for everyone who ran for school board. We were surprised when Perth Amboy's petitions were missing. We didn't get those petitions. The deadline to file to run was July 25th. On July 26th, we spoke to the county clerk's office, and they told us there isn't going to be a November election because the school board had once again tried to move it to April. So what the judge ruled in the case originally was that the school election couldn't be moved up because that would shorten the terms of the officials who'd already been elected by about 6 months. It would cut short their terms. The judge said you can't do it that way. The only way to make a switch is to delay the election and extend the terms. So ruled in favor of the city council, threw out their original attempt to move it to April 2016. But ultimately, the board tried again. They said, okay, if we have to delay it, let's delay it until April 2017 so that we can have these April elections that the Board of Ed wants so much. And remember, there's a lot of reasons for this on both sides. The April elections, the goal is to make sure that the folks that are voting actually care about the school system rather than lumping it in with these other political offices. A lot of folks who've been involved in boards of education are saying that now that they've switched to November, they see more and more politics, more and more partisan involvement in the school system, and it's debatable whether or not that's a good thing. So many towns want to switch back. Perth Amboy has now tried twice, and it is astonishing how they failed both times. Here's how it happened. So while this was all playing out, down in Trenton, there was a bill. The bill actually called for basically the overturning of the original law that let folks switch to the November elections. Folks can still switch, but the part that said they can switch back would be put on hold. And the law, which was actually signed by Governor Christie, now says that no town can switch back for at least 2 years. It creates a commission to study the issue, and ultimately, if it basically broke the promise that had been made to these districts that if they want to switch back, they'll be able to. So now, no district is able to switch back. But the really astonishing part is this bill, which was sponsored by Senator Joseph Vitale, who represents Perth Amboy. The bill actually is retroactive. So it goes back in time and undoes what the Perth Amboy Board of Education voted to do on June 30th, effectively canceling any attempt to move the election and overturning the Perth Amboy Board of Education's attempt to do that. So Perth Amboy is the only city in New Jersey that's affected by the bill in that way, and now folks in Perth Amboy are very upset. Here's why. Like we said, the deadline to run in the November election, to put in your petitions, was July 25th. Think about it this way. If you were a candidate, you want to win the election, you want to get involved in your school system, maybe you're a parent, you want to change the way things are going, you're not happy with the incumbents, you want to run. Well, the best chance of winning is getting your name to appear on the ballot. If you can't get your name on the ballot, it's probably going to be an uphill battle to get on the board. Getting on the ballot is perhaps the most important thing you can do for your campaign. To get on the ballot, it's required that you get 10 signatures from registered voters and turn them in at that building across the street from us. And again, that deadline was July 25th at 4 p.m. So the deadline had already passed when Governor Christie signed the bill moving the election back to November. So any reasonable person who wanted to run for office was denied the opportunity to, because all the powers that be were telling us there's not going to be an election. And then, after the deadline passed, Governor Christie signed Senator Vitale's bill, undoing the change that Perth Amboy Board of Ed had made, and disenfranchising folks in that city. Basically saying, well, if you didn't file your petition, you're out of luck. And we brought this up to the county clerk, Elaine Flynn. Her quote, "We follow the law." She says her hands are tied. She says there's nothing she can do. The statute says the deadline is July 25th. But this new state law that went out of its way to mess up what the Perth Amboy Board of Education has done has actually disenfranchised the entire community, because now voters aren't going to have as many choices as they might have had. So last night we went to the Perth Amboy Board of Education. We confronted the 3 incumbents who, despite passing that resolution to try to delay the election, they played it both ways, and they also submitted petitions on July 25th to run in the November election, the election that they were telling everyone wasn't going to happen. So we confronted them about this, and you'll be seeing that in a future New Brunswick Today article. But what we were really pleased to see is we weren't the only ones upset about this. There were actual community residents from Perth Amboy who showed up and spoke out against this injustice, against this unfair election. Now, we've covered unfair elections before, but this is unlike anything we've seen. This is a real concern here. Our country is supposed to be great because we have free and fair elections, but that is not happening in Perth Amboy this year. Unfortunately, the election is totally unfair because some folks had an advantage, an unfair advantage. They're able to get their name on the ballot because they had information about this bill coming down the way in Trenton, while others in the community didn't know and had every reason to believe that the next election wasn't going to be held until 2017. So here's the video from last night. We saw two great folks come out, a young woman, a student named Stephanie Rodriguez, and also Stanley Kierkowski, a regular at Perth Amboy meetings. Here's what they had to say about this issue.
My concern that has kind of become more and more of a concern throughout the year, though, has been the date of the election of the Board of Education meetings. I want to make something clear. I am neither for the April elections nor for the November elections, but I am for a fair election. And this past year has been rough, with at least the citizens in figuring out when the elections are truly going to be. Because one entity would claim that it would be in November, and another would claim that it would be in April. We have to remember that we live in a form of a democracy. This is not 100% of democracy, but it's something known as a representative democracy. It bothers me that as a citizen, I have the two biggest entities in town not being able to agree on something that is, compared to other things on the scale, quite simple. It's tough to see how the city crumbles and how the trust gets lost between citizens because that sense of democracy no longer exists. And I also want to make it clear that I'm not blaming either side or either entity. My point is that things could have been done, and the biggest issue was that the voters' voice was never heard. The citizens should have had a vote, some sort of referendum, to decide whether or not the election, in their eyes or in our eyes, would be better in November or in April. And unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, but now they're held in November, and there were people who were affected by this in ways that you might not be able to imagine. There's a handful of people that wanted to submit petitions and now they can't. People have been claiming that they no longer want to vote because trust has been lost.
It's not the Board of Education or the city. The city was involved. The mayor got the state senator to sponsor a bill to have the election's going to be in November, even though the previous law says that the Board of Education makes that decision. Okay, it has nothing to do with communication. But when you're talking about $275 million a year and turning this into a patronage pit, which the mayor wants, her attorneys, her accountants, her consultants, etc., that's what it was about. It was about money. Had nothing to do with students, because if it had to do with students, the mayor would have said, build the high school on the 32 acres on the other side of town. But she said no. A couple of big developers says, we want that land. So the mayor betrayed not only the residents of Perth Amboy, the students of Perth Amboy, generations of students. So again, it's about money. It's not about communications. Or Governor Christie, he signed the bill. It was supported by other multimillionaires in the state of New Jersey. Because again, the Board of Education in Newark is $1 billion a year. You know, it's a lot of money to be made at the student's expense. And that's what happened. Again, we had the right to do it. Mayor Diaz didn't want a referendum. That's why she's got the Senator Vitale to sponsor the legislation.
My concern that has kind of become more and more of a concern throughout the year, though, has been the date of the election of the board.
And welcome back. This is Charlie Cradville. We were at the Perth Amboy Board of Education last night. Those were a couple of concerned residents speaking out against the decision the switcheroo that keeps going on with the election day. It's been 4 different times that the election date has been switched now. Now, we asked the incumbents, and they basically, their answer to us was we're not going to answer your question at this point. So they did agree to meet, and it should be noted that the Perth Amboy Board of Ed last night passed a resolution authorizing their attorney, Jessica Kleen, to fight against Perth Amboy falling under this new law, but we'll see how successful they are. We asked what their strategy is, and they weren't willing to tell us. So we'll keep you posted on this story and much more at NewBrunswickToday.com. But right now, we're joined by a fellow newsman, a really impressive young man from Lacey Township, from Forked River, who started not one but two online publications that have really been shaking things up down in Ocean County. Ladies and gentlemen, Gavin Rossi. Thanks for joining us, Gavin.
Thank you, Charlie. It's great to be here in New Brunswick today, and looking forward to a lot of the great coverage you got here, especially with the school board. I've noticed some overlap with some of the issues we've seen in Ocean County, and that's an ongoing debate, November versus April. We'll see where the dust settles there.
Yeah, so tell us, how'd you get in this business? I didn't think I'd be doing this either, but you have really been doing a lot of great local coverage and coverage of some big power players down in Ocean County. You're still a college student. How did you end up doing this?
Well, certainly, Charlie. And just like you, I never really expected to be getting into this game myself. Really, based on my interests and skill set and the direction that I was going in life, I ended up just being bored in college one day, and that's where my second website, Ocean County Politics, was born from. And as I say on the site, our work focuses on the intersection of money and politics here in Ocean County, New Jersey, with a focus, of course, on public corruption. We've done this through public records requests, and really it started out as a hobby, but now really it's consumed me as a full-time endeavor, not unlike yourself here.
Yeah, and so you kind of do a lot of the same things we do. You use every tool you can to get the truth and expose it, and a lot of folks are really taking notice and talking to you and giving you tips and stuff like that. Wanted to ask about the Oprah law. It's a really important tool for journalists to be able to get their hands on public records. How has that worked for you? Do you have to fight for the records, or do they just surrender as soon as you show up at the town hall and say, "Here, take it all. We got nothing to hide"?
Well, yeah. You know what? I think I've seen everywhere from good public entities that get back to me right away, email, no problem, all the way to some of the less ethical entities, whether it be due to political interference or their policy or what have you. As far as that goes, we've had different issues with different municipalities. One issue that's going to be coming up, I do actually have an Oprah lawsuit that will be going out next week against the borough of Seaside Park. I've been unlawfully denied access to records there related to the Toms River Republican Club Board of Trustees President, Mr. Juan Ballou. We've already documented some allegations with him in violation of the club's own bylaws. He's residing in Seaside Park, but he is the chairman of the Toms River Republican Organization, so there's some settlements.
Interesting.
We're going to be having a lot to talk about more in depth on some of those matters, but I think we would both agree, as far as Oprah, whether it's Middlesex County or Ocean County, the players and names may be different, but at the end of the day, it's some of the same underlining stories. I think in a free and democratic society like we have with the Open Public Records Act, with the Freedom of Information Act on a federal level, I think we can both agree that at the end of the day, strong disclosure laws, strong accountability laws, financial disclosure statements, all that good stuff, that gives the public and the media the tools that they need to properly hold these public officials accountable.
Right. And so you're basically asking, and you've been denied a settlement agreement that's made with a public entity. So the government, made some deal to make a case go away in the court, and that is a public document that you feel you're entitled to. I believe courts have previously said that these types of documents are public documents, but the town just won't cough it up, so you have to actually sue them to force them to do it.
That's correct. And believe it or not, this entire saga with the borough of Seaside Park, I've been going back and forth with them since July 30th. And as a state law, Oprah does provide that there must be a response to the request within 7 business days, or that's constituted as a de facto denial. And really, there's nothing special about these documents that I'm trying to get. The Oprah statute provides that any record that is made or maintained by public entities within the jurisdiction of Oprah, must be provided, aside from the 24 exemptions and executive orders for redactions and all that stuff. All I want is the settlement agreement and the complaint, and I think really at this point, I've called them, my phone calls are not being returned, my faxes are not being answered. Whether or not there's any sort of unethical activity here, I have yet to look at the evidence here, but it certainly creates the intimation here that there's something in this settlement agreement that they don't want the public to know about, and that has only motivated me to be more persistent in my efforts.
Right. That's how you know when you're onto something.
And really unearth this. So
yeah.
this is really going to be quite the saga. I'm being represented by the very excellent C.J. Griffin of the firm Pashman Stein. She is one of the most eminent Oprah attorneys, representing everybody from John Paff and all those fine Oprah warriors, as they're called. And we're going to keep up the fight for transparency, and that's an issue I intend to press every day in Ocean County and beyond.
Great. Well, you're doing great work down there. I want to talk a little bit about both of your sites, because you started with a hyper-local site for your hometown, Lacey Township. I guess you thought there wasn't enough coverage going on, and you could fill that role. And it was such a hit that you have now rolled out a second site that focuses on the county and specifically on politics. Everybody should check out, if you haven't seen it yet, it's politicsoc.com. Really top-notch stuff on that site, as well as your original site. Tell us what sparked the decision to branch out and do more.
Certainly, Charlie. Well, the thing is, I think there's a lot of parallels and overlap between what you've done here with New Brunswick Today and really making up for that lack of coverage of the mainstream media. In 2012, believe it or not, when I was a junior in high school, that's when I started LaceyReporter.com. And really,
as a high school junior, did you say?
Yes, that's correct.
Wow. So you started your own hyper-local site, started covering local issues in your town as a high school junior. Wow, and that must have been a big hit.
Sure. And the method to the madness was really, in Lacey Township, we're a small town in southern Ocean County, comprised of the Forked River and Winoka Harbor section, south of Toms River, right really at the heart of the Jersey Shore. We've got the serenity of the Pine Barrens and the majesty of the Barnegat Bay. We also have, fun fact about Lacey Township, the oldest operating nuclear power plant,
Oyster Creek,
in the entire country, Oyster Creek, since the 60s. So there's really been a lot of issues that have been concerned to our readers and our local residents. And the issue is that the traditional print and online publications that have been serving our area, they really would just not delve into these stories for whatever reason that may be, whether it's their business model or whatever. So my goal,
it's hard work, right?
My goal wasn't to really take anyone's market share, but it was to make up for this lack of information and lack of coverage. And it caught on like wildfire. We've really had a lot of attention in Lacey Township. And in this February is actually when I decided to branch out with Ocean County Politics, politicsoc.com, and really focus on a lot of these issues that are really slipping through the cracks as far as the mainstream media.
Yeah, so now you get to go to different towns and do this, like you said, turn it upside down and really shine a light where there hasn't been transparency. So you're videotaping government meetings that have not usually been videotaped before. You're writing articles and filing Oprah requests and delving into some issues. You cover all sorts of things. It ends up including developments that are planned, or ethics complaints and lawyers and all kinds of stuff. What are your what do you really enjoy covering? What's your favorite kinds of stories to
Sure.
to delve into?
We've had a lot of interesting stories that have come up over the summer. And one of the stories that you reported on here, you mentioned that one of the people was tied to Hovnanian. There was actually a very controversial project involving Hovnanian on the site of a former uranium mine in Manchester Township, the next town.
Oh, that was the giant one.
Yeah,
right?
They wanted to build 6,543 homes. They said a city. This came from Jeff Tittle of the New Jersey Sierra Club. They alleged that this plan they wanted to build was the city a size of Perth Amboy or New Brunswick here in the middle of the protected Pine Barrens. So that was of concern to a lot of both environmentalists and residents. So we were there with video coverage of some of those very contentious planning board meetings.
Yeah, some people said some interesting things. I remember this was one that was new to me. The planning board member said to a lot of the older folks in the room, said, "Well, by the time this is built, you guys are probably going to be dead." Right, that was the logic.
That was a very, I guess you
logic.
could say, creative reason in
Right.
support of such a project, because Manchester Township in Ocean County, similar to Atlantic City and a lot of these towns that have had kind of one major industry that has driven their economy, in Manchester Township, there's not a lot you can build in some of these protected Pine Barrens areas, and for good reason.
Right.
So they traditionally have a lot of senior developments, retirement communities, and that's really what comprises their tax base. And clearly their residents were alarmed by the tone and rhetoric being expressed by one of the planning board members in that regard. And believe it or not, that project ended up getting tabled. Mayor Ken Palmer from Manchester, under their form of government there, he did exercise his right to veto that redevelopment ordinance. We've covered, that wasn't the first redevelopment plan we've covered. There's another controversial project in South Toms River where they have the site of an uncapped landfill that they want to build townhomes on. And really what our biggest thing that we've been focusing on has been pay to play, the financial disclosures, the contracts, and all sorts of stuff like that.
Right. So for those who are watching at home and you don't understand the concept of pay to play, how would you sum it up? It's kind of like a cycle, never-ending cycle of money and politics joined together.
Sure. Well, if you go, one of the best resources that some towns vary with how they make this available. Sometimes they'll make a bills and claims list available in the agendas of their public meetings. Sometimes you have to dig through the resolutions or even file an Oprah request and get them yourself if they don't post them on their website. But essentially, with pay to play, it's not a Democrat problem, it's not a Republican problem, it's something that you will see in both parties, whether it's New Brunswick or Forked River. These professional services firms, they will make contributions to either individual candidates, PACs, party committees, county committees, all sorts of stuff like that. They make these very large contributions, they sponsor cocktail parties, and then they wind up getting these contracts in what some would say is a spoils system, and it creates it creates a healthy bit of skepticism and concern among the public, because this is the public trust that they are dealing with here. That are we getting the best and brightest professional services for the money that we spend, or are we getting somebody because of political connections? And that's something we've explored extensively here at Ocean County Politics, and I know it's something you've covered extensively with the financial disclosure forms. You mentioned that earlier in the program. That is a fantastic resource. It's driven a lot of my reporting.
Yeah.
It's often a starting point for questions regarding conflicts of interest, and that's really a key concern for any public official, whether it's the MUA commissioners, school board members, or town council. We need to know that these individuals have our best interests at heart and that there aren't any hidden agendas guiding their actions.
Absolutely, yeah. And so the thing I really love about your site is you're not afraid to say it like it is and actually really try to educate people. So one of the articles you can find at Politics OC is how to file an ethics complaint, which I think is something that everyone who follows this stuff should really know, because like you said, it's as simple as getting the financial disclosure form and looking at where they say they get their money, and then if there's something that they're not putting on that form, that's a violation right there. And so I've actually caught Middlesex County Tax Board member, City Council President Kevin Egan not disclosing one of his rental properties that he owns, and it's amazing to see how the gears start turning once you file that complaint, and how it seems like so your article is very much about the local finance board,
right?
Because in most of the state and all of Ocean County, that's where you file your ethics complaint. There's a few towns that still have local ethics boards of their own, and sadly, they're usually an obstacle to getting to the local finance board. So here in New Brunswick, for instance, I had to file my complaint with the New Brunswick Ethics Board, a bunch of local people who obviously tend to have connections to be compromised when it comes to the city council president. And so, of course, you see the process of the system bending over backwards to try to exonerate people who are guilty, or it's really fascinating. So it's something that I would encourage people to do. If you think something's wrong, file that complaint. So kudos to you for putting that article out there. Have you ever done that, filed an ethics complaint?
I have not had reason to do so yet, but the day is young.
Yeah.
Who knows if anything comes up. And like you said, Charlie, these financial disclosure forms, they are really a key thing for transparency. One of your best things that you did was confronting the county prosecutor, because he put on the form just law firm, when it was in fact a politically connected law firm that really was raising some questions that really you had a duty to investigate as a journalist. And I found the Middlesex County prosecutor's response to your question, I think that left much to be desired. And as far as that goes, if you look at some of the criticisms that some well-respected people on the cutting edge of transparency, like John Paff have made. You see stuff like the local finance board, these local ethics boards. You're right; they can be an obstacle. If you see the Election Law Enforcement Commission on a similar but unrelated note, they haven't had quorums for their meetings.
Haven't
It's
been
the
able
same
to
thing.
do their job. Yeah.
I had 2 complaints pending before the Government Records Council, which for people watching at home is the state administrative agency for filing complaints if you're denied access to public records. I have 2 complaints that have been sitting on their docket for over a year and a half now, and no action has been taken. They have had meetings canceled due to lack of quorum. So, I think definitely, in my personal opinion at least, we need to stiffen these penalties. In some cases they're only $100 to $500. There really needs to be a strong deterrent to this lack of transparency, because ultimately, at the end of the day, this is the public trust, and we cannot see that public trust desecrated or harmed in any way by the conduct of these individuals here.
Cool. Well, we're going to have more with Gavin Rossi. Right now, please comment on the Facebook page if you want to call in. 732-993-9697. We have a comment.
Yeah, we have a question for the Facebook live stream right now for Gavin from Joanna D'Angelico. Sorry if I butchered that.
Okay.
Very interested in your position in Lacey politics, ampersand? Question mark?
In Lacey Township politics, well, what I would say about that, in Lacey Township right now, the election this year isn't really going to be that particularly exciting. The Ocean County Democratic Organization, Ocean County is a Republican bastion. Our county Republican chairman, George Gilmore, he delivered a 70,000 vote margin to Governor Christie, so it really is a Republican stronghold.
Heavy Christie country.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is prime Christie country. As far as Lacey Township politics go right now, we've got 2 council candidates that are running for re-election, Peter Curatolo and Stephen Kennis, who is our current mayor here. And, really there is not a lot going on in this election because no Democratic challengers have filed. We did have a split within the local Democratic organization where 2 of their former candidates actually did run as independents last year. That was Greg Panza and Barry Bender. And really, as far as the same players on the school board, probably the biggest shakeup that we had in Lacey in recent history was the 2014 election of Regina DeSenza to the school board. She ran in the wake of exposing the $19.8 million solar panel project among the 6 schools in Lacey, which ended up being the subject of a state comptroller's alert because we ended up spending about $20 on the dollar for those solar panels. Because essentially what happened was the previous business administrator and the administration at the time, they made the decision to hedge the financing of the entire project on SREC, which are the tax credits certificates for the solar panels. The SREC market bottomed out. They promised no tax increase as a result of the project. And we know with Governor Christie's lovely 2% property tax cap, debt service payments are not within that 2% cap. So unfortunately for the residents of Lacey, the taxes still ended up going up. And that was one of the biggest stories that we covered in the beginning of LaceyReporter.com.
Wow.
And by extension, moving forward to Ocean County politics with that as well.
Cool. So do you get involved in local races, or do you speak up at council meetings? Do you take public positions? I know your website has some very strong language on it, but do you get involved in the same way that political candidates do?
Typically there's a lot of people in every town. You've got them, people that will show up and speak at meetings. My policy is I only speak if I have something worth saying. I know people don't like. Some people like to hear the sound of their own voice. I'm not one of those people.
Sure.
The last time that I ended up speaking up at the podium at one of those school board meetings is when the board attorney attempted to interfere with our filming of a public meeting.
Oh man!
And that's
rookie mistake.
Yeah, well, Well, the guy's been the school board attorney for 28 years. I mean, I don't know how it could be a rookie mistake. I mean, at best, maybe he just misread the law or had a misunderstanding. At worst, maybe it was a malevolent attempt to silence public debate and discussion about the school board.
Mm-hmm.
But when those threats were made about me filming and trying to interfere with that, I took that very seriously.
You got up and you stood up for yourself.
I had to give them a little bit of a reminder about the Terrace v. Borough of Pine Hill, New Jersey State Supreme Court decision, which explicitly affirmed the right of the public to film open public meetings within the jurisdiction of the Open Public Meetings Act. So I actually did end up speaking at the podium last night at the Little Egg Harbor Township Committee meeting, which is a very contentious affair.
Yeah, you've been covering a whole sordid kind of case that's unraveling in that little tiny town. Tell us what happened last night.
Yes, certainly. Well, that meeting stretched to almost midnight there, and Little Egg Harbor Township Committeeman John Kem, in response to our reporting about questions surrounding the 90% tax assessment reduction he received on his property, along with some concerns about leaked documents we've been publishing, and he called for an attorney general's investigation into these leaked documents. And Charlie, you know as well as I do, the number one underpinning of American journalism is you never give up your sources. And I stated to him, it wasn't even during public comment, I had no obligation to answer, but I was called up to the podium, and when there's going to be unsubstantiated smears being made on my integrity, my character, and attacks like that, I had no choice but to respond, not only for the good of myself, but also for the good of the readers that put their trust in me every day for delivering the local stories they care about. So I did respond, and I did defend myself against these false accusations he was making. And
they said that you were up to no good because you somehow got these documents that you shouldn't have had.
Yes.
Right. Been there. Classic. That's when you know they're guilty. But so I want to first of all remind our viewers that you can still be the first caller on the New Brunswick Today Show. 732-993-9697. If you've got a question for me or Gavin or something that's going on in your neighborhood you want to talk about, please give us a call. I want to talk to you about some of the enemies you've made. So you actually are really fierce. You basically, I think, are a big part of the reason that a freeholder named Jack Kelly got his nomination to the parole board?
Yes, Governor Christie, Freeholder Kelly, if you look at an objective review of the facts and records, you can say that Freeholder Kelly, over his tenure as an Ocean County freeholder, he's one of the longest serving freeholders in the state.
Right.
Our county freeholder board, we have had one-party Republican rule in Ocean County since 1989. The last two Democrats to be elected to the Ocean County Board of Chosen Freeholders was former Toms River Mayor Paul Brush, along with his running mate Mark Troncone, who is now an Ocean County Superior Court judge. So we've had one-party rule there. And just like you mentioned with the issues surrounding the Middlesex County Tax Board, the issues down in Ocean County really are quite similar, because Freeholder Kelly has been the beneficiary of several invented public positions that have mainly come courtesy of strings pulled by Ocean County Republican Chairman George Gilmore.
Right, him and his family tend to get a lot of jobs that aren't necessarily advertised to everybody else or didn't exist before.
Exactly. What has happened is Freeholder Kelly, they created a position for him as airport analyst at the Atlantic City International Airport. The job description called for a college degree along with aviation experience. Freeholder Kelly only has a high school diploma, so objectively, he did not meet the qualifications for that job.
You probably have more aviation experience with your drone, right?
Yes, of course. I've done aerial photography. My neighbor Alan Baker, he actually is a builder, so I've been working with him to showcase some of the work he's been doing with his construction sites and all that good stuff, and also using it for journalism purposes. We used the drone in Lacey Township. The first journalistic use of the drone was earlier this year. We did an investigation into some of the questionable environmental practices of the sand mines operating in the middle of the Pine Barrens. We went to...
So you did a flyover and you got some footage. That's fascinating.
We did, yeah. A gentleman, one of our readers, David Grome, he has a property right next to one of these sand mines called Lacey Natural Sand. Yeah. And I was out on his property. He said, when they're supposed to spray down the truckloads of sand as it's going out, because they use this Pine Barren sand, they use it in construction, road work.
It's used to make cement and all kinds of stuff.
Sure. And the issue that was happening is, his yard where he has a farm on that property was like the Sahara Desert with sand blowing in. And the issue is, Charlie, it's an environmental debate. It's a question that we're going to have to collectively answer as a society with what we want to see in the environment in New Jersey. But these sand mines, when they dig down so deep and they really take everything out there, there's no remediation done to these sites. They're not required to really do anything. It becomes a public safety hazard. In the next town over in Manchester, at that same site where they wanted to build 6,543 homes, they did a sand mine there too. And someone actually drowned and died from swimming in the water there from the abandoned sand mine. So it ultimately ends up becoming a liability for the township later on and public safety. So there's really definitely a lot of concerns to be explored in that area.
Wow. So you're really off to a great start with your career. You're doing some amazing stuff. And I know that you, so not only did you call out Jack Kelly, and you basically cost him that parole board job.
Correct.
The governor appointed him, nominated him, said, this is the guy I want. And you kind of educated the public about different reasons why maybe he's not the best guy for the job. And he ended up backing out. So
Yes.
you accomplished that. You maintain a list of some of the worst officials. You deem the worst officials in Ocean County. You keep that on your website. You've also, you're not afraid to point out when the mainstream media is holding back or, has information and they don't share it with the public. And you've even, drawn the ire of other journalists who sometimes, criticize you. So you've got the Gilmore machine and even other journalists coming after you. Tell us about what it's like to be this kind of, person that a lot of people have strong opinions about, let's say.
I like that way of describing it, Charlie. And certainly, the thing is, when you put yourself out there, obviously, you can't make everybody happy. I've accepted that fact from day one, but I think if you consider the source where a lot of this flack has been coming from, you did mention, there was another journalist. I'm not going to give this individual, I would use the term journalist loosely because of the content and editorial judgments that this individual made. I'm not going to mention his name and give him any more attention, but I think if you consider the source, if you consider that some of these individuals that have made such gratuitous attacks, they have not been objectively able to say, Gavin, what you wrote was false. It's more of they don't like Gavin because
they attack
of what he's
other
writing.
things. They don't say it's false. They attack other things, and I know that well. Tell me what kinds of pushback have you gotten? So they tell you sometimes that you can't film a meeting when you're actually allowed to film the meeting. But have you had any other run-ins like police or any? How do they put the pressure on you?
Believe it or not, I will say the police and law enforcement have been nothing but professional to me wherever I've gone. I've never had any issues with them there. Believe it or not, one of our biggest stories on Lacey Reporter when it first started, one of our contributors, Andrew Flinchbaugh, he was filming at the scene of a car accident in Lacey Township, and they actually tried to arrest him and confiscate his
I
camera
remember
as
that was
evidence.
a big story. Yeah.
In I don't know what sort of legal precedent they were trying to rely on, but long story short, after we ended up publishing the video that Mr. Flinchbaugh filmed, Prosecutor Coronado had to issue a public apology.
He backtracked. He said
drop
we
all
were wrong.
charges.
Yeah.
And I give him credit for admitting he was wrong, and Mr. Flinchbaugh ended up suing the prosecutor's office. And I can't speak on behalf of him, but in my opinion, I believe he wasn't. Some people tried to say, oh, he's looking for a payday or something like that. He got a $1,500 settlement. He donated all $1,500 of it to the Bernie Sanders campaign. And really focused on trying to make a difference in the best way that he could. As far as other blowback, you did mention Freeholder Kelly. On some of the videos that we have on the Ocean County Politics website, if you log on, there's a button that says video coverage with a picture of TV. I would encourage everybody to go take a look there.
Yeah.
We've had some stuff as far as blowback. Freeholder Kelly did complain. Freeholder Kelly did admit that he reads every comment posted on the site and was complaining about some questions that some people raised and publicly responded to some of our internet commenters, which is within his purview to do. He certainly has a right to make his side of the story known.
And it shows you're making an impact when these guys say, not only do I read it, but I read all the comments.
Sure.
That's really something.
And what happened last night at the Little Egg Harbor meeting, I have over 40 gigabytes of video to go home and render and process, so I promise everybody that wants to see what happened last night, it's coming and it'll be worth the wait, I promise you. But Little Egg Harbor Committeeman John Kem, who I've mentioned before, we've really exposed a lot in that town. I've published leaked documents that have indicated there were grand jury subpoenas served on their MUA. There is an active FBI investigation into some of the affairs of some of the players down there, including political boss Joe Mazzina, and Freeholder Kelly's relative, Michael Fromosky, who they wanted to make the new head of the Ocean County Jail. He was shot down from that position after outrage from the Correction Officers Union. The Little Egg Harbor officials, they were able to come in and save the day and invent a position for him there as a code enforcement officer. We found that he's, through the internal reports that we've been able to been provided through our sources, we found that Mr. Fromosky was involved with sexual harassment against some township employees, and what was really interesting is a lot of the time I've questioned the integrity of some of these politically connected law firms, but a law firm tied to the Ocean County Republican machine, even they condemned Freeholder Kelly's relative, Mr. Fromosky,
Wow.
and they concluded in their investigation report written by the firm of Sidahol-Zapfel-Zabarsky, they concluded that there was, quote, no question that he violated the sexual harassment policy. And, that's not the only thing with Mr. Fromosky. We will be exploring some of those other storylines in Little Egg Harbor, and really, it's quite the tangled web that has been weaved, and we're trying to navigate through this whole web and put it together in a way that's easy to understand, both for the people that are political junkies that have really followed this from the beginning, but also those that may not be familiar with what's going on, and want to see how can they make a difference in their community, how can they be apprised of what's going on, and really what's the best way. My favorite quote is from Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis, that sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Sure.
And our goal is to shine as much sunlight as we can in Ocean County, and that's what we've been doing, Charlie.
Well, you're doing a great job, and I know you have a really excellent knack for finding the stories that really do matter to people and going to the right places and asking the right questions. Before we part ways, I just wanted to ask you to tell folks how they can support the work you're doing. I know you have a campaign to get people to make monthly contributions, monthly pledges to keep you doing what you're doing. And I think, especially after meeting you and watching this interview, people are going to want to support the work you're doing. You're how old are you?
I'm 19 years old.
You're 19 years old, and you have already accomplished so much. Imagine what you could accomplish with a little more support from the community. Tell folks how they can do that. How can they help?
Certainly. And my whole ethos with this here is we're trying to be people-powered news written by and for the citizens of Ocean County, and we're telling the stories that have been suppressed for years. Traditionally, when you only have two major newspapers, really, some things tend to fall through the cracks, whether it's because of editorial judgments they've made or business considerations as far as advertising goes. I do have a page on the crowdfunding website, Patreon, and that's where people can contribute any amount of money they want per month. I'm not going to put a paywall up and block people from logging in if they don't contribute. Really, my goal is to get this information out as far and wide as possible, so people can
right. You don't want to restrict it. You want people to get it, and so people can go to politicsoc.com, and there's a link for Patreon to become a monthly supporter, and it's also on the Lacey Reporter website as well.
Yes, it's both on there, and what we plan on doing. I have been overwhelmed with the response we've been getting. I've been getting contributions on there. People have been mailing checks to our P.O. box in Lenoka Harbor if that's what they prefer. And really the thing is, I spent a lot of money on camera equipment, video production costs, web server space. So really, my first and foremost goal is to, turn this into a sustainable operation. And as we eventually get more resources, I would like to bring more people on, expand our coverage. People really enjoy our videos of local government meetings because some people, whether they're senior citizens or disabled, unable to make it out to these meetings, we're able to bring the local government into the living rooms and phones of all these people. We have people in Florida, people that moved away that want to see what's going on in Ocean County. And believe it or not, we have a lot of our biggest growing segment of readers. We have a lot of people up in northern New Jersey that for whatever reason they're enjoying the storylines and a lot of the stuff that's been happening in Ocean County. So it's our goal to continue delivering this coverage to our readers and see where that takes us.
Great. Well, we wish you lots of luck. You've really, like I said, accomplished a lot as of now, and I think you have a very bright future ahead of you. So thanks for joining us today. Thank you at home for joining us. If you want to support politicsoc.com, check it out, look at the content, and please support Mr. Rozzi's fantastic work. You can also check out New Brunswick Today. Our August issue is still on newsstands. We're almost done with the September issue. We'll have it to you soon. And we will not be doing the show next Monday from our studios, but what we will do is we're going to go live Monday morning at an event with Congressman Frank Pallone, a roundtable event that's taking place down in Keyport. So we'll be out of the studio, but still bringing you live news. And hopefully we'll be back Tuesday, depending on what's going on with the Perth Amboy Police Chief's criminal case across the street. So there are some good witnesses there that we want to make sure we see. But we'll be back either Tuesday or Wednesday morning with the New Brunswick Today Show. Thank you to Gavin Rozzi for joining us. Thank you to everybody who watched. Please share this video and let people know about New Brunswick Today and politicsoc.com. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much to our staff and crew here. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you next time on the New Brunswick Today show.
Thanks for having me, Charlie.
Yeah,
Really
thank you, Gavin. Great job.